Hello everyone. I hope this is working. Should be. Let me double check that the Skype window is looking good. Looks it. Cool. Hello everyone that's in the chat, all 8 of you watching. Oh no, 7. No, 6. Never mind. We are the Sketchmasters, and this is a very strange way of doing Sketchclub. My name's Max.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Sam.
And yeah, we are currently having to live stream everything, which is very odd. Usually we'd be doing this in person in Michael Sterling, but this is probably the best we could come up with in the time frame. Usually we would also all be at mine doing it, but your boy's got the Rona, so he's gonna have to wait for a bit. But today we're gonna just get on with some perspective drawing and then basic rendering, different materials rendering. Don't know if you've been doing this yet in DP1 because we heard from Mike that you haven't got rendering materials yet, but you'll be able, like you can do rendering via pencil very easily. So you can do it with very few materials. And yeah, this is going to stay up on YouTube, so if you want to come back to it when you actually have got materials, then hopefully it's helpful. We've got some people in the chat already. We have not got any materials. Not yet. Not yet. But yeah, so this is kind of what we're just going to go over today, which is basic materials rendering. In the top left, I can even do it. I can do that as well. Yeah, in the top left of the screen, that is those are examples given to us by our lecturers last year, and in front of me is our rough, well, not really rough. These are renders I did during our DP1 exam, but spent way too much time doing and not doing the rest of the exam. So this is a good reference. I'm probably going to do that, but we're going to do slightly different materials for each this time. I want to say chrome cubes might be one of the hardest to do because it's such a flat face, it actually reflects it like a mirror. So you can't really draw yourself, you've kind of got to guess where things are. Usually you put it in a studio setting, is what this is called. So it's, imagine that's like the reflection of a white table going into a black studio behind it. Quite like difficult to get your head around how to present it, but once you've got your head around it, then it isn't actually too difficult to get across. But I think what we are going to do is probably a glass cube, maybe a chrome sphere, because that one's also quite difficult to get your head around. You can see that in the top corner. And then we might do a matte cone and maybe a glossy cylinder. So I'm going to get started. Have you got anything to add, Sketchmasters?
Just remember to add shadows to really ground the object, and just remember where the light, just imagine the light hitting the object while you're drawing it, and try and think of, like, if it's a reflective material, how the material would reflect the light, and sort of just, it's more of just remembering general rules, really. So just remember, just imagine the light hitting over your shoulder and then hitting the object like that. Is there anything to add?
No. This does take a while, so it's important to be patient and keep all the drawings you do, obviously, even if they're really bad, and just keep every single thing you do. Good for future reference, really. So.
Yeah, and it gives you like a point as well. Like, you look at it and you're like, oh, this is how far I've come. At the end of first year you'll look back and you'll see like the first sort of renders you did and the first like perspective drawings you did, and you'll be like, wow, I've really come a long way from there. So it's definitely good to keep old drawings to reference back to and things like that.
Because also God knows that our lecturers can be a bit harsh sometimes, so if you ever want to pick me up, go have a look at your old renders and drawings and realise that you've actually come a long way.
Yeah, it's definitely good to just like look back and be like, oh wow, like I was once at this level and that's great. And you know, everything, if you ever feel beat down, just remember the only way is up from there. So just don't let it stifle your spirits, just take it as motivation to do better in the future. They do be hard. Yes, they do.
I guess Max is starting with pencil now, so that when he applies the marker, correct me Max if you're going to do this, but you can apply a fine liner afterwards just to make sure you're not overlapping the marker or anything.
Yeah, so
Nice finish.
Yeah, what I might do just to make it a bit clearer, because I've just realised that you can't really see that very well, I've gone very lightly in pencil. I'm going to go in with a light fine liner just so you guys can see what I'm actually colouring in.
It's also constructed the like within the perspective box as it normally would be. So
exactly.
It's always good like to just keep up with those techniques and form a habit out of it. You know, just constructing things from a basic cube and building a shape from there, just as they will teach you how to, or as if they've taught you how to.
Precisely.
In a two-point perspective.
Now, also, one thing that I shied away from for absolutely ages when starting was that they said no rulers allowed. Now, it is a massive benefit having the skill of drawing straight lines by hand, because it means you can get ideas across quickly and you don't have to be faffing around. But if you have the time, there's no rules to say that you can't use a ruler. If you're trying to do a nice hero render for a very nice kind of like portfolio piece and you need a straight line, just do your fine liner and ruler. If you're doing a rough sketch to like get an idea across, then it just slows you down a bit and it stops your creativity. If your client's across the table from you whilst you're sketching or something, they might be like, well, this slows things down. But if you have the time, you can always use a ruler.
Yeah, definitely. But like Mike says, it's always good like for a hero image, but when you're just ideating, it's always good to just keep up with the techniques of just you know, using just drawing straight lines freehand, and there's plenty of exercises you can do to make yourself much more confident. There's a question in the chat that says, what would you guys say are some must-have drawing equipment? Not sure what I need. Cool grey markers.
Yes.
Need cool grey markers.
I'm just going to send a link on the chat for anyone who wants reference for some good markers and stuff, so I'm just doing that right now. It'll be up in a few seconds.
Cool, thank you.
I'm trying to
yeah, cool grey markers, and then just colours of like markers of just like primary colours, or just like, you know, the typical rainbow colours are good to keep in hand.
So this is, I mean, you'd be, well, a little bit out of pocket, because markers, depending on the brand, can be very expensive. Don't bother with Copics right now, because you'll end up doing a lot of bad drawings to get yourself good and wasting a lot of very expensive markers. I found that these pro markers are a good kind of like middle ground, because they're good quality, but you can buy them in packs that aren't too expensive. And they come in the cool grey 1 through 5. I've only got 1, 3 and 4, I think. And then a black marker, and then a blending marker. Now these don't always come in packs, but they can be helpful if you're trying to either blend between different shades of like one colour, or if you're trying to blend very light grey into white. They can be quite useful. But yeah, I also think, yeah, so then colours, kind of colours that you like using, to be honest. If you feel like you're going to have a style with different colours, use the colours that you like. I know I've got a fair amount of like teal markers and orange markers because they look quite nice. They're quite complementary. And then also I'm going to be using a white gel pen and a white pencil. These are pretty good if you're doing colour paper renders, which is what I'm going to be doing the glass render on. I've got some halftone paper here. It's from a sketchbook. These are really good. They're also really good because they're skin tone. They're really good if you're just an artist and like doing portraits, because you can add shadows and highlights just on that paper. Pretty good. Stops you having to colour everything in, because that's what we did before we had colour paper. We would colour an entire page in with a marker and completely waste that marker. I think I'm going to start this cone as just doing a matte, so make sure a satin finish.
Just to answer the question where to get a white gel pen from, WH Smith sell them. You could also look on like Amazon. If you're really, if you're able to, then Cast Art do some as well. But a white, like Max said, a white gel pen and a white pencil are massive staples, because they really bring a render to life if you have a highlight on it, especially if it's a reflective material. Not so much on satin materials, they don't really reflect any light. It's supposed to have like a sort of soft appearance, but yeah, it's definitely good to be able to show a highlight, as you'll see later with the chrome finish ones.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, and the glass finish ones too.
Yeah. In terms of getting a nice, even finish, doing layers is a real key. If you go one streaky layer, you're going to see the streaks. If you go over a few times, you'll be able to see it, but the real trick comes into letting it dry for a second, and then you can layer up only using the same colour. If you start using different colours, the hue starts to change and it goes a bit weird. If you use greys, it gets desaturated. If you use different blues, it can be a little bit like funky. You can layer up shadows using just the same. So I'm going to pick a point of light, so I'm going to pick where my lamp's coming from so I don't forget. So the right hand side is going to be all in shadow, so I can just start.
Yeah, so basically just build up the pen in areas where you want it to be darker and leave areas where you want it to be lighter, just as Max is doing now. It's definitely, like you said, it's best to just keep with the same pen and not to, use different variations of the same sort of color. So with the cool grey ones, they'll have different names on each one, but they'll have, for example, like C3 or C5, C7. So that's basically it. The pen shade's getting darker and darker, and it's best to just keep with one pen and build that up, rather than trying to, putting down a base color and then using a deeper tone on top of that, because then it might end up a lot darker than you thought it would. It'd also be good, like when you first test your markers to see what color they come out as on the paper, just have like one scrap sheet to test the marker on and then apply it to your render.
Definitely. Like you might want to use these two, one slightly darker than the other, but if you were to do a little test swatch of both, you'll be able to see that probably wasn't the best idea, because they are in completely different colours and it won't look the same, it won't look right in terms of trying to get them to blend. Something that I was told about, like they told us this right at the beginning of the year, but I took a long time to catch on to, that really does help, is knowing the speed of your pen. If you go slower, you'll put down more ink and it will be darker. If you go faster, then it will be
quite streaky.
yeah, it'll come out streaky, but if you've already put some layers down, it comes out lighter. So if you are kind of like going back and forth and you want it to do a bit of a gradient like this, I was going much slower along this side and much faster along this side, so I can get a bit of a gradient going. And then layering is probably the key, but layering helps a lot, the speed helps a lot with that as well.
Yeah, and the question is being used, just as Seb's put in the chat. It's marker paper, or like render paper, so basically it's got a sort of like waxy finish on it. It doesn't soak up as much ink as like regular printer paper would be. Yeah, just as Max was showing, it's a marker pad, and the uni should supply you with those, I think, when they send out the kits, but I don't know if they've already sent them out or whatever's happening with that. But yeah, it's got like a sort of glossy finish on it, so it doesn't absorb too much ink from the pen itself. The pen's like very strong, so you'll find on other types of paper they might bleed through, so it's always best to keep an extra sheet of paper underneath the sheet that you're rendering on, just in case you bleed through to the table, which is never a good thing.
No, never a good thing. I've got some spare sheets behind this that have already got pen on them.
Yeah. There's something else I want to say in regards to the pen render. I forget.
So now I'm just putting down a shadow in the direction that the light was, like opposite to the light, opposite to the direction that the light was coming from. There we go. And a good way to give it more weight is to also put a very thin line. If you get these pens that have the chisel and the bullet nibs, you can put a very thin line around the front of it, leading to the shadow at the back, and that's actually a good way just to give it a bit more weight. It makes it feel like it's actually sitting there instead of it just being at the back. Otherwise it can feel like a bit of a misplaced shadow. And then once that's all put in, I can go in with a thicker fine liner just to make sure I've tidied up all my marker lines. I can see a little bit bleeding over at the top.
Also, never feel like restricted in the way that you use your marker pens. You can hold them at many different angles. You don't have to just stick with, you know, especially with the chisel tip, you don't need to just stick with the longest edge touching the paper. You can also use the shorter edge. You can really just use and abuse the pens. Like, they're there for you to use. They're an extension of yourself. Like, don't feel limited.
We're getting existential on here.
Existential, yes.
It's an extension of yourself.
But like, definitely don't feel limited in the way you use the pen. What's better, pro markers or Copics? I think it depends on the person. Like, I get on better with Copics, but I have pro markers as well, and I don't know. I prefer Copics, honestly.
I think
everyone's got their own preference.
Yeah, I think a professional would argue Copics, a student would argue pro markers.
Yeah, because of the price difference. Like, Copics are ridiculously expensive, and well, they have pros and cons. So Copics are expensive, but they're very strong alcohol-based markers. And they're very pigmented as well. They blend quite easily, but also sometimes you get quite I don't know, it depends, like more, sometimes you end up with like a slightly streaky finish, but I think I don't know, like pro markers are probably best to go for towards the end of first year. But like Max said, like at the beginning, just go with cheaper markers, because you'll burn through them really quickly if you're doing a lot of render practice and things like that.
I'm a pro marker guy. I like my pro markers.
What do you prefer, Fred?
I think if you get pens that don't bleed too much, it's a lot about what you make of it as well. So you can have a really good set of markers, but obviously it just takes a bit of time to get used to any kind of marker you have. So just getting used to what you have at the moment is the best thing you can do. Getting used to the colors, the textures, the forces you need to apply.
I mean, you can even experiment with highlighter pens as well. If you really just want to do like a quick rough marker render, just you can always just use a highlighting marker. Like, I've seen people do that before. It's quite cool especially if they're like luminescent. They're like an electric green cylinder. But yeah, just if you just want to get used to sort of applying the material itself, then yeah, it's quite fun to just experiment with different pens and things.
Now, I've just done a very long-winded way of basically doing a cylinder. This is probably, if you've got lots of complex shapes as well during your product, this is probably a safe way of doing it. So you make a square, and then you make another square lower down, obviously following the perspective. So I'm guessing you guys have already done the 2-point perspective talk, and you kind of know a bit about that. So you'll have your horizon line, and this is a little bit below it, and this is a little bit below that. So this oval is going to be slightly more squashed than this one, and then you join it up in a big oblong, and then you connect the sides. But a quicker way of doing it, which after you have some practice really is helpful for saving time, is you can do a squashed oval, kind of follow the path down and do a less squashed oval, and then you join the lines, and then you have a much faster with less construction lines cylinder. But this isn't always the best if you've got lots of complex shapes on your sketch already, or you need to like do it from a strange perspective. So it's up to you really. I'm going to do this one because it's a bit bigger. But yeah.
The main thing, especially when drawing like products or objects and things like that, is really forcing a perspective. So you really have to give the illusion that this object is grounded, it's in a plane of existence, like it appears to be real on the page, and especially with ellipses and the oval sort of thing that Max was drawing, is you can really create a perspective based on like the height of the ellipse and that kind of thing, like especially for objects like cylinders. Like as you can see, like Max is drawing the top of the cylinder.
Yeah, not very well.
That no, it looks good. So that would be as if you're looking down at the cylinder sort of thing. Whereas like if you was to just draw the top half of the oval, and not the bottom half, it would be as if you're looking up at the cylinder. So just remember sort of what lines you want to include when you're drawing these shapes, and just you can really force the perspective with the fine line shapes the fine line lines that you put in afterwards.
It's a nice poppin' red, like that. I'm just going to, you shouldn't really, so what is a good practice is you should sketch out your drawings in pencil, then go over it with some fine liner, and then these pieces of paper are quite translucent. You should trace it after that. So you should get another one of these pieces of paper, and you should trace it. You can see it through the paper. I'm not sure if you can on camera. You can see it through the paper, which is probably the best thing to do, which means if you ever mess up your render, you have another one to copy from, and it means that you don't have any pencil construction lines. I'm not doing that just because of time. I'm going to lightly rub this out, not too much, but only lightly, just so we can get a bit more clean reflections, because I'm going to do gloss on this cylinder, which means there are going to be some white spots. I'm going to use this nice red colour.
It's definitely a good technique to use about keeping just a plain fine liner drawing. It is extra effort, but it will save you a lot of pain in the future if you do feel like your render, if you don't like the render, you don't have to draw the entire thing from scratch again. You can just trace the original line drawing and render on top of that.
Definitely. So with a gloss finish, as you can see in the picture in the top left, it's kind of got a white top to it, and that's because it's showing pure reflection of light. If you wanted to make it fully accurate, to say these were all in the same space and that cube was next to it, you'd also have that same reflection pattern on the top of the cylinder, because it would be reflecting it the same way, or on the same plane. But this one's got a fully white top because it's supposed to be reflecting pure a pure LED light or something like that. I don't know what it's supposed to be. And then when it hits the circle around, it has really big streaks. Now the way that we got told to do this is to draw in your streaks first. Once you get a little bit more competent with it, you can kind of judge, but you can kind of just draw in where you want your light streaks to be if this pencil wants to work. So you can just kind of very lightly put in pencil lines where you think your highlights could be, and there's usually one, and then like a larger one where the actual reflection is coming from, and then usually a slightly smaller one coming from reflections elsewhere in the room. So you'll have the one light source coming from here, and then you'll have another light source that's bouncing it onto here. And then these parts in between are going to be going darker with a marker. So I can start putting that in now.
Yeah, so you can see like right in the middle of the cylinder is like sort of the darkest part, and then at the edges as well is quite dark. So I think it's quite odd that there's a light shine on each side, but that's just the way that they tell us to do it, so just do it the way it's told. Don't argue with the boss. But yeah, the on the sort of the facets facing you the most, then you put the darkest tone there, and at the edges as well. Yeah, it's just sort of giving it some depth on the page. Otherwise, it sort of looks a bit static if it's just one flat color.
You'll notice how Max as well is turning the page. I mean, don't be shy turning the page around because your hand motions are going to be in the same direction. So rather move the page around to accommodate your hand. You can do nice long streaks or nice smooth
movements.
Yeah.
Like definitely, like just your materials for you to use. Like there's not like you don't need to be static with the way you use your materials. Like you can really move them around and make yourself comfortable when you draw. There's no point being uncomfortable while you're doing this, because you might find yourself practicing for many hours on end trying to get like the perfect render. So you know, it's best to just get comfortable, and then if you get comfortable with it, like whatever way, stick with it. Like there's no point changing just because like other people are doing it a certain way. Like do it the way that you're comfortable.
At the end of the day, it's drawing. However you want to do it, and however works best for you, that's how you should do it. Obviously, the tutors aren't talking out their asses. They do know what they're talking about. They are professionals, and they have had a lot of experience. But if something that they say doesn't suit your way of drawing, then find a different way of doing it. Totally.
Yeah. And as you like, it's not as obvious, but you'll find it when you're drawing. Is when you do particular movements, you should move like with your arm rather than with your wrist. So then you have a more sort of controlled movement, and it will be much straighter. So like moving with your arm straighter than trying to move with your wrist. Like difficult to show, but you'll definitely feel it when you're doing it. So just try different techniques as well.
Yeah, well, I'll demonstrate it quickly. If you're moving with just your wrist, where am I? If you're moving with just your wrist, you have a very small turning circle, so you're going to end up having an arc about that. If you're moving with your arm, and especially if you extend the pencil like this, you end up with a much longer arc. And if you know how to then, you know, move your fingers against that and move your wrist against that, you can end up with straight lines. So that's, yeah.
It's really just being comfortable with, you know, with the pens that you're using, the pencils that you're using, that kind of thing. It's definitely like being comfortable with what you're doing. And it takes practice. Like you can't expect yourself to be amazing at rendering overnight. I know, you know, some people still struggle with it, and no one's ever really happy with a render, you know, until someone's like, that's really good. Like, so it's okay to feel like you're not the best at something. You need to learn. You're not expected to be the best as soon as you get there. So just, you know, it's all a learning experience. I just work and develop skills rather than trying to be the best. I remember like Francis said to me that it's better to work at a level below than the best than to work at a level higher than the best. You know, so you have something to work towards rather than nothing to work towards. I know, it's quite sad words of wisdom. Like you're not good enough, but it's fine. It's like, you know, it's all a learning experience.
Yeah, you can have 10 to 20 poor drawings to one really great drawing you find really amazing. So it just takes time, really. I mean, no one's really cracked it. It just takes time, really.
Yeah, also it's quite subjective because everyone's got their own drawing style. Like they're trying to teach you to draw in a style that is like sort of expected within industry, and they'll sort of, especially when it comes to ideation, which we'll cover in a later live stream, but like they definitely expect you to draw in a particular style, but you'll find, especially with some of the live projects later on in like, you know, in the later years and stuff, you'll realize like everyone's got their own style of drawing, you know. No one's perfect at everything, you know, everyone's got their own strengths, so it's sort of just working to those strengths and improving the places that you're not super happy with or comfortable in.
So, that was very well said, Sarah. Whilst you were describing that, I was just adding a little bit of white pencil just to add a couple more highlighted streaks, one either side of the big reflection and then a smaller one near the small reflection, just to give it a little bit more feel of reflectivity. It doesn't always work. Sometimes, like, I don't think this one particularly works. Sometimes it just looks over the top, but if you look at Chrome, you can see that it is basically all just lines. So yeah, and then I've added the kind of pattern that the cube, that the gloss cube has, to the top of this, and I went on with a little bit of white gel pen just to hide this black line where the light would be hitting it, just to give it a bit more idea that the light is hitting it on that corner, so that's where it's reflecting. And now I'm going to go in with a little bit
It's very good.
of
Very.
shadow. I mean,
I like how you've layered the white pencil over the marker as well. It really gives it like a transition color rather than just like stark white against red.
thank you. I mean, speaking of finding your own style and being like feeling a little bit like let down, I'm the worst sketcher of the Sketchmasters. Yeah, I'm the one doing the demonstration. So
No,
you guys,
something like that.
I mean,
You're not the best sketcher at all.
just
That was ready, so I guess it, you know.
It makes us sound awful.
no. That's me saying that. Just you wait until oh yeah, now I'm putting the pressure on you guys. Just you wait until Seb and Sarah do a live sketch club. Oh, it's good.
No, we will, like, you know, everyone's got their own style, and you'll come to definitely appreciate that towards constructing your portfolio for the DP1 deadline. I know it's not for a while yet, you guys don't need to worry, but just, you know, remember there is a portfolio deadline. It will happen. It will be like the worst couple weeks of your life, especially if you leave it to the last minute. Definitely try and be organized.
Try and be organized, and just as you like get work done, put it into the portfolio, and that'll help you a lot.
Yeah.
Can't
Just try and keep on top of the work, honestly.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide which I found worse, the DP1 portfolio or the graphics, because the graphics were just a lot of work to get through as well.
Yeah, I definitely preferred my graphics over my DP1 work. My DP1 work I was not happy with, but that's again my own fault for leaving it late and not getting on top of it a lot sooner.
I'm gonna move fast.
Always purposely quite broad in what they ask you to do. It's the way you interpret it as well, I think. So.
I am in fact cheating and just using a compass for the circle. I could spend ages trying to draw a good circle, but why would I when I can just do that?
I don't know why I didn't think of this during the DP1 exam. I fully sat there and tried to sketch the circle. I just was like so blindsided by panic that I was just like, okay, I need to just draw a circle in 2-point perspective.
I think I traced like.
A sphere is
I think I traced this. This is my pen pot, which looks like a Mario thing. I'll just trace that. I'll just put that down and drew around it.
It's what design is all about.
Oh yeah. I might need to go a little bit quicker, seeing as we are 40 minutes in and I've done the 2 most easy shapes.
You'll be okay. This one is just like heavy enough. Well, you're doing chrome.
Yeah. Chrome is a weird one. It's so what you're looking at is. I'm trying to point at the right camera. It's a bit weird. What you're looking at is on the top. The reflection is, like I say, the studio. So these are kind of like the lights, and then the black, kind of like surrounding the highlight at the top, is going to be kind of the studio room, and then the highlight at the bottom is going to be the table that it sat on. So usually it's very warped, so it doesn't really matter what shape the table is. That would be like a white table that it sat on, and then as it gets gradually darker to the base, that's the actual shadow from the sphere itself. So you're always gonna like not just think about how the what you're rendering is influencing the environment, how the environment is then re-influencing the shape. If that makes sense. I sound a bit like a loony.
No, it's like it makes sense. But like, I mean, the chrome sphere is always just a really weird one. Like, just because of the shapes involved in the sphere itself. So, but again, it's always best to like draw in pencil the shapes that you want to marker, like render and marker first, so then you sort of know where you go with it, but only very lightly in pencil. Don't do like super hard pencil for guidelines, because then you'll see it under the marker. The markers are quite translucent anyway, so just do a light pencil and then erase slightly and then marker on top.
I mean, I always found the sphere the hardest, especially the chrome sphere. I don't think I can still get it to this day. It's quite
You have to think like how many things you actually go into design in chrome. It's like, it's difficult to think like I don't think anyone sat down and thought, yes, I'm going to design a chrome sphere.
I think chrome is either like kind of comes across as either tacky or 1960s futuristic, which is basically everything from the 1960s but chrome was their idea of the future, which I find hilarious.
Yeah. Also like red as well. Like anything chrome, red and silver is very like the idealistic future, I believe.
Mm.
But still, anyway, just it's okay.
Yeah, you're talking about how little you actually render chrome. I've realised the last time I've actually drawn chrome was this exercise last year. So
yeah, the DP1. I don't think I've drawn anything chrome since then. But it's still good to know how to do it. You still want to remember sort of how it would look and that kind of thing. You know, it's definitely good to remember these material renders for future reference, because I mean, I still reference my material renders when I'm rendering something. So it's good to remember these and sort of where the light hits and sort of what sort of bounds of colour you expect to find and that kind of thing, and what shadows as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you ever forget what a material looks like, I mean, it sounds a bit stupid, but you can always just find the material wherever you're at, really. Especially with glossy plastic, for example, you can really see the streaks of colour, the streaks of highlights as well. So it's just looking around you and seeing. You're just trying to capture the detail of the material as much as you can.
Yeah, so if something's like matte or satin, it like won't really reflect light as much as something that is clear or gloss or something like that. So you just sort of use things that are around you as reference points as well, because real life, like, you know, you want to make these renders seem as real as possible, like as if they're like actually in real life So just use the things that are around you as references for these sorts of things. And don't be scared to like Google things as well. Like I've definitely Googled reference images before, for materials and things like that. But again, rendering is difficult, and markers, they're a good medium to use for rendering, but they're not. First of all, they're not the only medium, and second of all, they don't always depict what you're imagining. Like, the whole point of designing and drawing and rendering, that kind of thing, is to sort of get what's in your head out and communicate it to someone else. So what they told us was to only render in the color that you actually imagine the product to be in. So don't render something in like blue if you want the final product to be in yellow. If you're presenting an idea to a client, you want it to be in the color that you envision the product to be. And every color has its own meaning, but you'll stumble across that in like semiotics and semantics and graphics. You'll be attacked by what color means then. so don't worry about that just yet.
How does color make you feel, guys?
Yeah. Those were some of the oddest lectures. It's like, what do you feel when you look at this? And it's just like, I don't know, I'm half awake. I just woke up. Yeah.
So what I'm doing to help blend these, because like we said before, it's great if you use the same shade, but to go from a like almost white to black gradient is very difficult to get that across. I'm using the different greys. What I like to do is I used to go from like 1 to 3 to 4, but then to blend the 4 to the 3, which had quite a harsh line, I went back to the 3. So I put some 4 down, make sure it's nice and dark and thick, and then you might be able to see there's a slight line where the 4 ends and the 3 starts. So I'll go back in with the 3 and kind of just blend that out a bit whilst it's still wet. It's important to do it whilst it's still wet, otherwise it might not. And then, because I have the luxury of a clear marker, I might try and blend a little bit the cool grey 1 into the white. Or if you don't have a clear marker, you can do this and kind of get a more gentle gradient using a white pencil, just kind of like shading it in.
Yeah, don't be scared to layer different materials on top of each other. Like, do what you have to make an image come across. And like Max was saying, like, just don't be fearful of putting white pencil on top of marker. It does create quite a nice effect as well, and it helps blend from one sort of tone to another.
So I put that black down, and it was really quite stark, the contrast between the black and the grey. But after going over it with grey 4, it becomes a little less obvious. But obviously, if you like that banding, you can have that as part of your style. Who's to say that you can't have kind of like a more staggered gradient when it comes to shading? If that's what you want to do, then you do that.
Yeah, first year is like all about learning the skills and techniques, and towards the end of first year, you will definitely, towards the end of like first term, you'll have like your own style and your own way of working and drawing. So, like the first year is all about learning and sort of discovering the processes within design and sort of the steps you need to take to make, to achieve a fully finished design. And don't be like Max was saying, you can have your own style. If you like the banded look, then have that as part of it. When you're comfortable with the materials and you're comfortable with your own drawing style, you'll definitely like fall into your own with it. And I think a big shift happens from first term to second term. After you come back from Christmas break, you'll be like, okay, I'm clued in. Like, I know what's happening now. Like, I'm not new anymore. I've been here a while. Like, it's a change, and it's a confidence booster as well.
I'm happy with that. I never do the shadows right on chrome spheres because I can never judge.
It's really good.
It's all right. Yeah, I mean, so the black should really be meeting the black there, but That's not too shabby. So obviously it wouldn't just be a grey shadow. You would go from the black because that's what you have on there. You wouldn't be reflecting black, but the shadow is only grey. Cool. Last but not least, we're gonna do glass. I'm gonna switch to some coloured paper. This paper is not made for markers. You can get coloured paper made for markers, but this is not. So we'll see how badly this bleeds through. Yeah, in terms of materials that you guys have probably like used most in your own ideation and sketching, which material would you say that you have had to draw the most by hand?
Oh, probably plastic. A lot of things are in plastic.
Yeah.
I don't think I've designed anything like that's in metal or in wood. I know like one of the exercises we have to do is like ceramic, but that's basically the shading is plastic really, with a bit more. Well, it's not quite the same as plastic. It doesn't have quite harsh of highlights. It's got more subtle highlights. But yeah, I think I've just basically done plastic for the whole of first year.
I think you can definitely encompass a range of materials within, like glossy plastics, matte plastics, metals. Obviously, glass is glass, but we've also got textures like wood, which I don't think they teach you.
No.
But that's quite interesting as well. It's not the most difficult thing to draw, but obviously
it's a lot of layering.
It is, yeah,
sort of building up the grain and that kind of thing. Like you have to think what like sort of things exemplify the material you're trying to do. So wood is like, obviously you have wood grain, so that's like the main. Like you can always identify wood as wood because it's got the grain and like the knots and that kind of thing. So it's sort of just having your drawings embody. That's a bit weird. Embody like the material they're supposed to be, especially with rendering.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean.
What about you, Max? What have you designed?
Well, I don't think I've ever actually done anything in wood, but something, I guess it's just me like wanting to design things that are overcomplicated, but I always find myself coming back to clear. I drew so much kind of like clear acrylic in the different like design ideas that we had, and that was really just like trial and error trying to get like the diffraction right. That's something that really sells the clear. If you get good diffraction, so when you see like the back of the shape, but it's all like shifted over slightly.
Yeah, distorted.
Yeah. So I don't know how clear you can see that. I've done that in a incredibly thin fine liner because obviously glass wouldn't really have any black edges. And I'm going to go back in. I totally forgot to do, talking about diffraction, totally forgot to do the back of the cube as well because you can see through it, so you're going to be able to do.
Also, like if you're rendering on white paper, like obviously this is a great technique to learn with different coloured paper as your background, and I'm pretty sure there is a task that you'll need to do where it is just like tonal paper or coloured paper, but also you can do a you can put like a block of colour behind something that's supposed to be glass, and then it sort of shows it a lot easier and clearly if it's like that it's glass, because you can see that block of colour behind.
Yeah, if I show you my
the object itself, whereas normally if it was like a solid, like say if it was just plastic, then you wouldn't be able to see that block of colour behind.
Like here I just put some grey marker down very quickly. As you can see, it's very streaky, but that kind of gets the idea across that you can put in highlights that pop. But you can also just do it straight onto white paper. I have not mastered that yet. I have not mastered the drawing glass but on white.
Paper.
That is tough to do, to get across.
I don't think anyone's mastered that.
Yeah, because it's so difficult to get across the idea that it has highlights, because the whole thing is a highlight.
Yeah. For our DP2, like our first project, like Project Zero, an element of my design is glass, and trying to make sure I get that white highlight on sort of on the glass to sort of give it the shape of the glass as well. You know, it's difficult, but again, it's not impossible. And as Max will show you, it's all of technique.
Yeah. So I've actually done a very thin frame, but I've left these two corners completely bare. I'm going to fill those in with white so that you get a only highlight on that, because that is the direction that I'm like considering the light to come from. And I might go over that with some gel pen in a bit. But beauty of cubes is you can use rulers for everything, so it doesn't look out of shape. So the main thing that that's a bit wonky, isn't it? Whoops.
Well, it's in perspective.
Fix it in post. So I'm gonna go from the top and do this kind of shading backwards, which is just kind of like because glass is a tough one because it's not only clear, so you got to think about everything throughout it, and it also has a slight amount of mass, so it does cast some shadows. It is also reflective, so it is probably the most. Chrome is probably the hardest to get you to wrap your head around, but
yeah, but glass is definitely the most difficult to
consider all aspects
and like envision.
Yeah, you got to remember all aspects of glass, which is a bit tough.
Yeah.
So that's going to be like.
Remember, the shadow is there, but it's not as dark as other shadows would be.
So I'm gonna.
Obviously, light can pass through it.
So I'm gonna do the entire shadow in Cool Grey 1, I think. And let's see how this paper reacts to marker for the first time. So if this is coming.
Your test spot?
Good shout.
Also, guys, because we're like winding to the end now, if, like Seb said in the chat, if there's any questions you want to ask, feel free to put them in the chat now, and we'll answer them once Max is finished with his render. Sort of give you some time to think about it, and maybe put them in the chat if you want. It's okay.
If you want to ask us during the week as well, feel free to go on the Instagram
or on the Facebook as well. Yeah,
that's true. And just DM, so it's private. And yeah,
there's plenty of ways to talk to us, and you don't need to ask questions about just like sketching or the society. If you have any questions about the course or anything like that, we are here to be your voice, sort of thing. So if there's anything you want to see from the society or from us, then feel free to message and get, just really let it be known what you want. Don't feel scared, we're here for you guys. So, just, we're here for you. Sad as that sounds.
We're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
Especially doing this COVID pathetic.
Yeah. And we're doing all that we can. I know, like, online lectures, I for one love them, but other people are finding them difficult because they miss the social aspect. A huge part of design is the community that surrounds it and being a part of that community. And so we're trying our best to sort of keep that aspect of it through the medium of the online world.
Cool. I think my Cool Grey 1 is running out, unfortunately.
The paper is just draining it.
Yeah, it's sucking it up, so it looks very streaky.
That's the risk of not using
marker paper.
You get sad pens and streaky lines, unfortunately. That's okay. Like, yeah, you don't need to worry too much about. Yeah.
It's silky as well.
You don't need to worry about like streaky application though of like the markers and stuff. Again, you're only first year, you're only learning, like it's okay. It's okay if it's a little bit streaky. I know some of the things that ended up in my portfolio, the marker application was streaky at best, so it's okay, it's fine. It's just a part of it. That is not.
talking about streakiness for portfolio, and also earlier we were talking about color and choosing color. If you ever decide that the color that you choose is not the one that you want to use, or your render is a little bit streaky and you want to put it in your portfolio, you can always Photoshop it. That is an option. They don't ridicule you too much if you want to Photoshop things just to be a little bit neater or change the color of it. I've changed the color of loads of things that I rendered in first year for my portfolio.
Yeah, and you can definitely like clean up images as well. So say if like you did a test spot and it like or something's bled through onto your thing, and you just need to sort of remove that bit from. We can't see. Your hair's in the way.
Oh, apologies. I realised when I bumped it.
But it, like if you ever just want to say if you have like fingerprints on the page and that kind of thing, like you can always put the image in Photoshop, especially if it's for portfolio. It's not so much if it's just like a quick drawing or ideation, but if it's for the portfolio, put it in Photoshop, clean up the fingerprints and stuff like that.
I during when you get to making your DP1 portfolio, we're gonna have a session just going throughout the process, your scans and stuff, how to make them a bit nicer in Photoshop without completely changing them. So just adding white out in the background, having the best quality you can as well. So yeah, basic things like that. I'll get you through.
Super fun stuff. Definitely not boring.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Your portfolio is your chance to show yourself as a designer. It's your chance to create an identity for your design and for yourself. So, it's definitely a very serious task to take on.
Definitely. I think that's relatively glass-like. The shadow might be a little bit out of perspective.
No, it's good. I believe it to be glass. Definitely better than some of the glass renders I've done, believe me.
I think the main thing is my shadows came in a bit, and if a light source is close to the shape, the shadow would be spreading out a bit more. But apart from that, yeah, it's very much just trying to think about the highlights. So I've gone in with a white gel pen and actually rounded off the corners, because a lot of the time you don't get very sharp white things. You'll get quite rounded things, like they'll round it over or it get rounded over time. So I've just done that. That's something you can use on the chrome as well. If you look at the chrome cube that they've done, where is it there? They've rounded the corner a bit because it's unlikely that you'll get a extremely sharp chrome cube. But yeah, if you've got any other questions, please let us know. We can go to the Q&A slide. There we go. You can see us.
I guess this is you can just have so much layering of the thin stuff to make it look as good as you can, but in the end, it's just about doing nice, sleek streaks.
Yeah, it's better to do like too little than too much, isn't it? You don't want to overwork a render because then you can't use it, and well, you can't. Obviously, you can use whatever you want, but like you don't want to overwork something to the point where like the paper's torn through because of the amount of ink that you put on. Like, it's better to go like Seb said, go less and more, sort of thing.
Wow, made good time actually. I was like, oh, it's like 7:20, but no, that's cool.
We give it a few more minutes if there are any questions,
and then call it.
Yeah, or questions about the course or about us or
about life.
Yeah.
We'll answer it.
Yeah.
2 minutes or so. That's good.
No, they're good renders, man. It's really good job.
Yeah,
and it's good that you put the shadows in all of them. Sometimes I forget to put a shadow in, so it doesn't really. It sort of just looks like it's floating rather than actually like grounded. So. Well,
once again, if you forget to put shadows in, and you like scan it in, and you're like, oh, I need to put like this feels like it's floating. You can always Photoshop shadows in.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a question.
Definitely.
What sort of things do you guys?
Do for the collection, I think.
Oh.
I did plastic water bottles. because they're easy to carry, but obviously you guys don't need to worry about bringing stuff in this year, well, this term at least. But do something that can be quite versatile and make it personal to you. Don't just like do something like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, I know it sounds so ridiculous, and I remember getting so angry last year when they're just like, have a narrative and tell a story. Like, I remember getting like so angry about it, but
Yeah, it's very abstract. So
it's incredibly abstract.
I think if the simpler the object often is.
They've been really
makes
brief
it
with what we're going to do in classes. Yeah, they
They will be. They will be. They won't tell you anything. It's the best advice I can give is the process book. The process that you're tracking is the creation of the book. A lot, like, for absolutely ages, they were like, oh, it's the process. And we were like, the process of what? And they were like, it's just the process of you learning. Basically, document how you made the book. Document, like...
you have like lectures on grids and like placing images and that kind of thing. It's basically you'll have like a 2-page slide about like how you laid out your book. Oh, sorry, slide, but like 2-page thing about how you laid out your book, and then on the next page it'll be like, what grids did you use? And then on the next one it'll be like, why did I choose these colors and stuff like that. It's literally just how you made the book in the book. It's very like meta.
Very meta. What collection did you do, Seb?
I did a skateboarding tour. It's something that's a bit niche, but it's something that I knew a bit about as well, so it was very interesting. And it was strange at first trying to find a story through that, because it can seem so banal, but when you start learning the skills and graphics and stuff, it gets a bit easier to see the end point, to see a narrative in it. So. But hopefully the graphics team is going to do something about. I think they've planned something for the graphics books, so that is to come soon. When it's due,
maybe.
I don't know. What did you do, Max?
I did guitar picks because I like my guitar, and I'm left with about 500 guitar picks. They are everywhere, and I am not in any short supply. I remember your book actually, Seb. You were one of the very few people in the year that got it printed in the end because of lockdown. But it looked absolutely brilliant.
Oh well, thanks. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, but it was just before COVID and everything. But
yes, Seb was really on top of his project. Like, he kept on top of it the entire time. Like, he didn't mess about. Whereas like, for the first process book, I tried to do it like all in the last 2 weeks, but for the second one, as soon as they set the project, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and keep on top of this, because it's a huge thing to try and do at once. You really need to just try and keep on top of it. Like, I know I can't stress it enough how much you need to keep on top of these things, because they will just pile on at the very end. You'll be like trying to submit your portfolio and the process book, and like you end up neglecting like everything else just to get these 2 done, and they're like not even. Oh, it's just silly.
Yeah, no, I think I like didn't sleep for, I think it was 2 whole days, because we had mechanics as well, because I'm doing BSc. We had mechanics module as well, and we'd asked for a delay on the schedule, and it meant that the deadline was also the same day as the graphics, so that was no sleep for 2 days straight, just trying to get both of them done because I didn't stay on top of it.
Yeah. Deciding between sunglasses and kitchen utensils, but not sure what will be the best for these times. Well, you have to think sort of what you can make of it. So like with sunglasses, you can do, things about like hiding yourself or like shutting yourself out. I'm not sure what you could do with kitchen utensils. Maybe focus on like the utility of them.
I mean, kitchen utensils, you could do something about being at home, like being
like domestic life and that kind of thing.
How's that going to you?
Yeah, so that's what they mean by like a narrative, is when it's like, I know it's like, it's so annoying to hear when they're like, have a narrative, but it's always like, what can you relate this object to? What can you like ground it in reality to, and that kind of thing. Like, when with the plastic water bottles that I did, like obviously the first option would be to do like pollution and that kind of thing, but I didn't, I don't know how to word this, but like like I don't want to go with like the easiest option, so I looked in like entrapment and like emotional, like keeping it to yourself and like not expressing how you feel and that kind of thing. And yeah, they won't really explain it explicitly what a narrative is because it's quite an abstract concept. But it's literally just what can you relate your product or like your collection to in real life.
I mean,
Or like what concept can you relate it to?
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble, like, for instance, with my own, because I thought, what narrative can I make out of guitar picks? Because guitar picks are guitar picks. It doesn't really get much simpler than that. But I ended up going along the whole route of rock and roll, and how, like, picks are the tool for rock and roll that unlocks a guitarist world. And it ended up being a lot about kind of like sex and drugs as well. So it was all like my process book was called Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, and the whole narrative was different colors relating to it's like the colors, for instance, was like red, and it was relating to how red relates to sex, how it relates to drugs, and how it relates to rock and roll, trying to link all of those to guitar picks. So you just got to think, what you can get the most out of when it comes to what they mean. So yeah, I think sunglasses probably be the best one out of the kitchen utensils in terms of if you want to go along the routes of shutting yourself away, having a bit more emotion behind it. But then again, you do patterns. You can make some cool kitchen utensil patterns. It's very much up to you.
Yeah, definitely, and it's completely up to you. Like you have to think, what can you, like Max was saying, what can you make out of it? Just think of what your object is, and then think of the concept, the context that it's in. So like with Max's, he's done like rock and roll and like skill building, that kind of thing. You have to think of your collection in context, and then things that relate to it. So it might be best to do like a spider diagram, like a brainstorm where you look at what is my collection. So like you look at sunglasses and like what does it mean to people, like what does it mean to you, like what areas can you explore within it, and like kitchen utensils, like stuff like the current situation with COVID, like what's it like being trapped in the house and that kind of thing. If you see it as being trapped in the house, you might love it. I don't know.
You
like
sympathize with the tools that are always in the kitchen.
Yeah, like they're always, and it's like one confined space. They never get to go any further than that. Just be really like creative with it. Just be really like, abstract is the best way to go because they'll love it. They'll eat it up if it's abstract.
And if you're stuck for ideas on how to be abstract, you can look up some studies to do with stuff. So look up different things to do with kitchen utensils. Something about sunglasses that I read like ages ago was that apparently men find women more attractive without sunglasses because they like the asymmetry of a face, but women on average find men more attractive with sunglasses because the sunglasses gives the face symmetry, and that's what the female brain perceives as more attractive. So there are really weird studies that you can find that could have something to do with it, and you can kind of riff off that, say kind of like, then you could go into, sunglasses are like hiding who I am kind of thing, trying to be more attractive, trying to be someone else. It's like that, like it could be just inspiration, or you could end up using stuff like that in your book if you wanted. Like just research around your collection. Don't just think, this is my collection, I know what I know about it, I'm going to draw all my knowledge from what I know. Broaden it. Like I found out about how guitar picks were first made, and that took me on to, you don't want to know how guitar picks were first made, those poor turtles. It very much like takes you to different places. So yeah, research everything.
And remember to keep a log of all of like your references, so any books that you use, any websites, that kind of thing, because you will need to construct a reference list at the end to put at the end of your book. So just remember to keep a log of all of those. And that's it really. Other than just keep on top of it, but you know, like I remember the second years telling us to keep on top of it, and I was like, it'll be fine. And then it came to like 2 weeks before, and it was like just hell on earth, like until the deadline. But you will live these things. You will live these experiences. Yeah, it'll be the same thing every year. It's not enough to have someone tell you to keep on top of it. Like you will learn this. You will live it. It's fine. It's all part of the process. You're here to learn. Like, do not stress. Like, and don't be scared of the tutors as well. I know they can be quite mean and scary sometimes, but don't worry. They're here to help you. They're humans too. You can speak to them and be like, I need help, I'm really struggling. Because like I know, especially in like the first term, I was just like in bits about the entire everything. Like it was way too much for me. I remember going to them and being like, I can't do this, and they were just like, okay, it's fine, just calm down. Like take it step by step. Like don't try and like, I know it's difficult not to, but don't try and overwhelm yourself with loads of different things at once. Like just take it as it comes.
Definitely.
They are humans too. You can speak to them. You can speak to anyone. No one is scary. We're all here to help each other.
Apart from Mike Khan. Mike Khan can be a little bit scary. He's lovely, but he can definitely be the harshest and DP one.
Oh yeah, but it's to teach you. It's to teach you.
Yeah. All in good faith.
You will meet people like that your entire life, especially within industry. So just it's all a learning curve.
Totally. All right then. Well, if there are any other questions, thank you everyone for joining first ever live stream Sketch Club. It has been very weird for I'm sure you guys, but also for us because we've never done this before. I'm glad it all actually works as planned, and yeah, we'll see you.
Thanks for drawing as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Max.
That's all right. That's all right. I needed the practice for this year, and hopefully we'll be able to. Well, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time on the YouTube channel again. So next week we'll be putting out a video on Instagram, giving you some tips and tricks on sketching and rendering. It'll kind of relate to what you're doing in DP1 at the moment. But yeah, week after that we'll be doing this again, and we'll be doing some more sketching. So
thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks.
See you everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.